Their revelation of the secret film project came with an emotional weight that was impossible to ignore. Johnny Depp leaned forward slightly as he explained that the film, still untitled, was conceived during one of the lowest points in his life, a period when he found it difficult to get out of bed, let alone imagine creating art again. Cruz had come to visit him in France during a particularly dark stretch in 2022. They spent long evenings talking, sipping wine by the fire, revisiting memories of their earlier work together, and dreaming about a story they could tell. Not one, crafted by a studio or filtered through Hollywood expectations, but something pure, something that bared their souls. The idea began as a therapeutic exercise, with Depp scribbling down thoughts in a leather-bound notebook, uncertain whether they would ever see the light of day. Cruz encouraged him to keep going, offering her own ideas and shaping the emotional core of the narrative. Before long, what started as a collection of cathartic monologues evolved into a script, a story of two individuals broken by fame, misunderstood by the world, and yet fiercely connected through an invisible, unbreakable bond. They spoke of writing scenes that mirrored their own experiences, moments of vulnerability and resilience, scenes that peeled away the armor they'd built over years in the spotlight. Depp admitted that he hadn't acted with such honesty in decades. He confessed to being terrified of confronting certain truths through the process, about his identity, about the person he had become, and about the pieces of himself that he had lost along the way. Cruz was his mirror in this journey, reflecting back a version of him that he had forgotten. She described the process of filming as the most emotionally draining and spiritually liberating experience of her career. They chose to direct it together, refusing to hand the reins to anyone else. The filming took place quietly in remote locations across Europe. Abandoned castles, forgotten coastlines, candlelit interiors that carried an almost haunting intimacy. They funded it independently, kept the crew minimal, and swore everyone involved to secrecy. As they spoke, it became evident that this project was more than a film. It was a reclamation of their identities. Depp spoke about scenes that were so close to reality that they left him in tears after each take. He described one in particular, a long, uninterrupted shot of him sitting at a piano, playing a piece he wrote during a time of near collapse. Cruz sat beside him in the scene, silent, holding a glass of wine, her eyes fixed on the keys, saying nothing yet speaking volumes with her presence. That scene, Depp said, wasn't acting. It was memory. Cruz nodded, adding that the hardest part was not breaking down during filming, especially in scenes that mirrored conversations they'd had in real life, some joyful, others painful. They revealed that the film doesn't follow a traditional narrative structure. It's part fiction, part confession, a meditation on fame, betrayal, recovery, and loyalty. The film ends not with resolution, but with a sense of quiet endurance. 2. People still standing after the storm, changed, scarred, but unbroken. When asked why they were revealing the project now, they said it felt like the right time. We're no longer afraid, Cruz stated. This is who we are, Depp added. That after years of being portrayed through the lens of others, they were finally telling their own story, on their own terms. The film, he said, isn't meant for mass appeal. It's for those who have felt misunderstood, silenced, or forgotten. In a final moment of the video, they looked at each other, not as celebrities, but as people who had walked through hell, together and emerged with something real. It wasn't about love in the romantic sense, nor was it simply about friendship. It was something deeper, rarer, a chosen kinship born from mutual survival. And that, more than the film, more than the announcement, was what left viewers stunned. The undeniable, unfiltered bond between two souls who refused to let the world define them. As the world continued to dissect every frame of the announcement, those closest to Johnny Depp and Penelope Cruz began to quietly affirm the authenticity of the project. Industry insiders who had previously worked with the pair spoke of the deeply personal nature of the script, noting how uncharacteristically guarded they had both been about it. No agents were involved in pitching it to distributors, no studios were contacted for funding, and even some of their longtime collaborators were left out of the loop. This wasn't a passion project in the trendy, colloquial sense. It was a lifeline, a sacred undertaking shielded from the usual machinery of Hollywood deal-making. One crew member who worked on the shoot under a strict NDA anonymously shared that there was an almost reverent atmosphere on set. "It didn't feel like we were making a movie," they said. "It felt like we were bearing witness to something deeply real, something raw and fragile." Cruz's directorial style, according to early leaks, was deeply intuitive. She encouraged improvisation, asked actors to bring their own pain into the performances, and often filmed without rehearsals to capture genuine reactions. Her decision to use natural lighting, long takes, and intimate close-ups gave the footage a haunting immediacy. She said in the video that she felt an almost maternal responsibility to protect the emotional truth of the scenes, especially those depicting Depp's most vulnerable moments. For her, directing wasn't about control. It was about creating a safe space where honesty could flourish. Depp, meanwhile, seemed reborn through the project. Longtime friends described him as more grounded than he had been in years, energized by the opportunity to act not for applause but for catharsis. In Through the Ashes, he doesn't play a version of himself meant to provoke sympathy or rage. He plays a man unraveling in silence, in the spaces between headlines, in the private turmoil that the world rarely sees. As interest in the project skyrocketed, distribution companies reportedly began reaching out with offers. But Depp and Cruz, true to their word, remained selective. They are considering a limited release, possibly debuting the film at an international festival known for celebrating auteur-driven cinema rather than commercial viability. Cruz mentioned Venice or Cannes as potential platforms, not for prestige, but because those festivals still value intimate storytelling and emotional depth. They want the film to be experienced in its intended form, on the big screen, in quiet theaters, with viewers willing to sit in stillness and confront discomfort. Critics and commentators have begun to draw comparisons between Through the Ashes and other deeply personal cinematic works, like Ingmar Bergman's Persona or John Cassavetes' A Woman Under the Influence. Films that weren't just narratives, but soul-bearing explorations of the human condition. Some industry veterans have called Cruz's move brave, especially in an era when actresses turned directors are still scrutinized more harshly than their male counterparts. Others have questioned whether such a personal film can resonate widely. But for Cruz and Depp, resonance was never the goal. The goal was truth. Even as gossip outlets continue to speculate about the true nature of their relationship, the actors remain focused on the work. In private, those close to them say that the experience of making Through the Ashes changed both of them irrevocably. They have emerged more resilient, more self-assured, and more committed to authenticity than ever before. Their joint statement ended with a message to those who feel silenced or erased. You are not alone. Your story matters, and when the world tries to rewrite your truth, write it louder. It was a fitting end to a revelation that was less about scandal and more about healing, about reclaiming the narrative from those who seek to distort it. And in doing so, Johnny Depp and Penelope Cruz may have redefined what it means to survive fame. The deeper the layers of Through the Ashes are revealed, the clearer it becomes that this film is not just a passion project. It's a radical departure from the conventional filmmaking process. Penelope Cruz and Johnny Depp's choice to self-fund wasn't just about maintaining creative control. It was about building an entirely new space where authenticity could thrive, free from the manufactured polish and compromises that so often dilute the emotional core of personal stories. Cruz explained that turning down studio backing wasn't a dramatic gesture but a practical necessity. Every time a financier entered the picture, the story was reshaped, the vulnerability trimmed, and the vision blurred. One potential backer suggested changing the ending to make it more uplifting, while another encouraged the inclusion of a romantic subplot to broaden market appeal. Both actors saw these suggestions as betrayals of the emotional honesty they had worked so hard to cultivate. The financial implications of such a bold move were considerable. Depp has been candid about his financial difficulties following years of lawsuits, career setbacks, and extravagant spending. He liquidated several assets, including artwork and collectibles, to contribute to the film's modest but meaningful budget. Friends close to him revealed that this project is one of the few things he's clung to as a symbol of hope and agency in a time when much of his public image was shaped by others. Cruz, too, made sacrifices. She declined high-paying film roles and commercial endorsements to focus entirely on the direction and production of Through the Ashes. Her dedication was so total that, according to a close friend, she lived inside the film, spending nearly every waking hour on location, in editing suites, or in long creative meetings with Depp. Their filming locations were not randomly chosen. They were intentionally sought out to mirror emotional beats in the story. A crumbling Spanish villa represents the fractured foundation of the protagonist's past. A fog-laden forest in Brittany becomes the symbolic setting of confusion and isolation. An abandoned opera house in Naples, steeped in echoes of performance and memory, provides a haunting backdrop for the character's confrontation with his public persona. These spaces weren't just beautiful or cinematic, they were emotionally resonant. Many had personal ties to Depp and Cruz, who described visiting some of these places during pivotal moments in their lives. The natural settings also allowed for spontaneous filming, where weather and light shaped the tone of each scene, adding layers of realism that no studio set could replicate. The production team was intentionally small, never more than 30 people on set at a time, including the cast. Many of them were longtime collaborators or individuals handpicked for their sensitivity and discretion. One crew member, a sound technician who previously worked on documentaries, said the set felt more like a retreat than a production. There were moments we would stop everything, just to sit in silence and talk about what a scene meant. It wasn't just about getting the shot. It was about honoring the truth in the scene. Cruz's direction style defied traditional hierarchies. There was no yelling, no rigid schedules, no tension between above-the-line talent and crew. Everyone was treated as a contributor, regardless of their role. Daily rituals were adopted, shared meals, meditative moments before difficult scenes, music played not to energize but to ground. Even the editing process has followed this intimate blueprint. Rather than handing over the footage to a large post-production house, Cruz and Depp have been working closely with a small team of editors, reviewing scenes slowly, thoughtfully, often pausing to discuss the emotional truth behind each cut. This grassroots, soul-driven approach has already sparked interest from global art house circles and independent film festivals eager to feature the project. But for Depp and Cruz, external validation is secondary. What matters is that the film exists at all, that it was created in defiance of a system that too often silences complex, uncomfortable truths. In creating Through the Ashes, they haven't just made a film. They've reclaimed their voices, their friendship, and perhaps most importantly, their freedom to create something that could never have come to life within the confines of conventional Hollywood. Not everyone responded with applause. As with any bold move in the public eye, the announcement was met with a spectrum of reactions, ranging from deeply emotional support to biting skepticism and criticism. While many fans celebrated Johnny Depp's retirement as a dignified farewell, from a beloved icon, others questioned the timing and motives behind such a declaration. Detractors argued that the decision to retire could be a calculated attempt to exit on a high note, leveraging public sympathy and anticipation for Through the Ashes to reshape his legacy. Some critics went so far as to suggest that the move was a cleverly disguised damage control effort, pointing to the tumultuous years of legal drama and scandal that had dominated headlines. For those still unconvinced of Depp's innocence or redemption, the idea of him being framed as a misunderstood artist seeking peace didn't sit comfortably. There were also murmurs within Hollywood circles expressing concern over the precedent this kind of production might set. Industry insiders, particularly those tied to major studios, viewed Depp and Cruz's independent venture as a challenge to the traditional power structure. By bypassing the usual channels, they had effectively undermined a system built on control, hierarchy, and profitability. Some feared this could encourage other high-profile talents to do the same, potentially destabilizing the established economic model of mainstream cinema. There was unease among certain executives and producers who worried that if a film like Through the Ashes found success, it could inspire a wave of similar self-funded, emotionally raw storytelling that prioritized authenticity over commercial appeal. That kind of shift would not only threaten their influence, but also force uncomfortable introspection about the content Hollywood chooses to uplift or suppress. There were also those who felt uneasy about the blurred line between fiction and reality in the film. Ethical debates arose over the inclusion of characters modeled after real public figures, even if unnamed. Commentators warned that this approach could open the door to legal challenges, accusations of defamation, or unintended harm. Some called it reckless, suggesting that even if the story was deeply personal, airing such thinly veiled portrayals could reignite controversies or strain professional relationships. Still, neither Cruz nor Depp seemed fazed by these concerns. They acknowledged the risks but emphasized that the emotional truth of the story was worth any backlash. Meanwhile, traditional media outlets were divided in their coverage. Some publications praised the duo's vulnerability and vision, calling the announcement a cultural milestone. Others took a more cynical stance, dissecting the emotional video for inconsistencies and questioning whether it was yet another orchestrated narrative designed to control public perception. But regardless of where one stood, one thing was clear. Through the Ashes had touched a nerve. It had become more than a film. It was a cultural flashpoint, igniting conversations about celebrity, redemption, truth, and the changing face of cinematic storytelling. While the announcement was widely celebrated by fans and many in the industry, a wave of skepticism soon followed. Critics and skeptics scrutinized every frame of the announcement video, noting the precision of its presentation. The stylized black and white format, the strategically dim lighting, and the emotionally timed silences all contributed to a growing chorus of voices accusing the video of being more performance than confession. For some, it felt too perfect, too emotionally orchestrated to be entirely sincere. The way Depp and Cruz spoke, the subtle, tearful pauses, the tightly framed close-ups that lingered just long enough to evoke empathy, these elements, while moving, also raised red flags for viewers accustomed to the curated nature of celebrity messaging. Online forums and pundits began dissecting the video like a film scene, suggesting it was meticulously designed to humanize the actors at a time when public opinion could be swayed. Adding fuel to the fire was the suspicious timing of the release. Mere weeks before the Cannes Film Festival, whispers began to circulate that Through the Ashes had been quietly submitted for a secret screening or potential competition slot. Though no official statements confirmed or denied this, the timing seemed too convenient for some critics, who questioned whether the emotional announcement was doubling as a stealth marketing campaign. Was this really an unfiltered look at two wounded artists reclaiming their narrative? Or was it a masterclass in PR? Media outlets ran speculative headlines, and some film insiders began whispering that the emotional gravity of the video might be less about artistic catharsis and more about generating buzz and award season momentum. But Depp and Cruz didn't ignore the criticism. In subsequent interviews, they spoke with a rawness and intensity that contrasted starkly with the carefully composed video. Depp, no stranger to public vilification, delivered a blunt and unwavering response. This isn't theater. This isn't about forgiveness. This is about finality. It's my last performance, on screen and off. His tone was not polished. It was weary, even combative, as though he was no longer willing to plead his case in a court of public opinion. Cruz, too, appeared visibly shaken by the backlash. Gone was the calm poise of the video. Her voice cracked as she addressed accusations of manipulation. We knew people would doubt us, but we've lived under that doubt for years. This isn't for them. It's for the ones who understand what it means to survive something and still want to create. The criticism, painful as it was, couldn't drown out the deeper resonance the announcement stirred. Behind the public spectacle was a more uncomfortable truth, one that struck a nerve with both fans and fellow artists. The video, whether viewed as genuine or contrived, had forced a conversation long overdue. The cost of fame in the digital age, the pressure to maintain a pristine image, the rapid cycle of elevation and destruction. Cruz and Depp, in exposing themselves to renewed scrutiny, had cracked open the polished surface of celebrity life to reveal the fractured humanity beneath it. They recounted being dropped by colleagues when headlines turned against them, enduring whispers and avoidance at industry events and feeling like ghosts in a world they once ruled. They spoke of sleepless nights, endless therapy sessions, and the quiet terror of being misunderstood. The glitz and glamour so often associated with stardom were replaced by admissions of vulnerability, moments of self-doubt, of wondering whether their careers, their reputations, or even their worth had evaporated entirely. The announcement video, for all its cinematic quality, served a dual purpose. Not only to introduce Through the Ashes, but to deliver an emotional reckoning. It was not just a declaration of intent, but a challenge to the very systems that demanded constant reinvention and unyielding perfection from its stars. By stepping away from that treadmill and choosing to tell their own story, Depp and Cruz had redefined the narrative, choosing authenticity over approval, truth over polish. For better or worse, they had ignited a cultural dialogue that could not be ignored. One of the most poignant and humanizing aspects of the announcement came when both actors turned the conversation toward their families. Penélope Cruz, known for her fierce protection of her private life, allowed a rare glimpse into her deeply maternal instincts. She spoke softly yet firmly about the responsibility she feels to shield her children from the harshness of public life. There was no bitterness in her voice, just a profound understanding of how fame can distort reality, how easily the industry can strip away innocence. She explained that her children have grown up with an understanding of boundaries and the importance of emotional authenticity because she has worked tirelessly to keep them rooted in something real. Her words were not performative. They carried the weight of a mother who has seen the cost of visibility and chosen, above all else, to preserve her children's humanity. She referenced moments when she questioned whether continuing in the public eye was worth it at all, especially when she saw how other children of celebrities had struggled under the spotlight. But ultimately, she said, it wasn't about walking away. It was about showing them, through action, how to live with integrity, even in a world that often rewards compromise. Johnny Depp's reflections on fatherhood were even more emotionally raw. When he spoke of his daughter, Lily Rose, his eyes filled with a quiet ache, a mixture of pride, gratitude, and sorrow. He called her his anchor, describing her unwavering calm during times when he felt lost at sea. There was something deeply moving in the way he recounted late-night conversations with her, moments when roles reversed and she became his confidant, his counselor. He admitted that he had never expected to lean so heavily on his child, but in doing so, he discovered a deeper kind of love, a connection forged not in comfort but in adversity. He also alluded to the guilt he sometimes felt, knowing that his battles with the press and the industry had indirectly affected her. Yet through it all, she had stood by him, offering not judgment, but presence. Depp's voice cracked as he said that the person he was today, the one making this final on-screen appearance, was someone shaped in part by her quiet strength. It was a moment that stripped away every layer of performance and left only the father, the man, standing exposed. As the dust settles from their announcement, the anticipation surrounding Through the Ashes grows by the day. Even before its release, the film has sparked a broader conversation not just about the project itself, but about the very fabric of celebrity storytelling. There's a palpable feeling in the air, one of suspended breath, of a collective pause as audiences wait to see whether the film will deliver on its promise of unfiltered honesty. Rumors of a late-year premiere persist, possibly tied to a surprise debut that would mirror the unconventional spirit of the project. Whispers about invitations being quietly sent to key film festivals, about the possibility of limited preview screenings in intimate, non-Hollywood venues, all add to the mystique. But the buzz is not purely driven by industry gossip. It's fueled by something more intangible. A hope that this film might mark a return to meaningful cinema, to stories that demand reflection instead of distraction. Yet perhaps more significant than the film's potential impact is the legacy of the moment Cruz and Depp created with their announcement. This wasn't a press tour or a brand campaign. It was a truth-telling session in a world that too often punishes vulnerability. They weren't seeking forgiveness, redemption, or validation. What they offered was a rare and unflinching act of personal reclamation. In choosing to lift the veil and speak directly, without filters, they gave others permission to do the same. Artists began sharing stories of disillusionment with the studio system, fans opened up about their own struggles with identity and judgment, and a quiet movement of sorts began to unfold, one that values sincerity over spectacle. In an era where celebrity statements are often vetted through teams of handlers and measured in metrics of engagement, what Depp and Cruz did felt revolutionary. They weren't perfect. They didn't offer easy narratives or glossy conclusions, but in their imperfection, they reminded the world that true art, true humanity, isn't about packaging. It's about process. It's about showing up with all the scars and still choosing to speak. Their announcement wasn't just about their film or even their careers. It was about reclaiming space in a world that often leaves little room for contradiction, for complexity, for pain. And in doing so, they not only redefined their own stories, they invited others to do the same. Their partnership, once merely admired for its creative chemistry, now stands as a symbol of emotional solidarity. They didn't just work together, they held space for each other in the most sacred way. Through whispered fears, sleepless nights, and quiet moments of clarity, they became not just collaborators but witnesses to each other's transformation. The foundation of their film is built not on cinematic ambition, but on a trust that runs deeper than industry alliances or red carpet appearances. It's that bond, pure, unshakable, earned through survival, that gives Through the Ashes its heartbeat. Whether or not the film earns critical accolades or shatters box office records may ultimately be irrelevant. Its true success lies in its existence, born from risk, nurtured through honesty, and delivered with courage. As Johnny Depp prepares to close the curtain on a decades-long acting career, and Penélope Cruz steps fully into her role as a visionary filmmaker, their final message together resonates louder than any plot twist or dramatic monologue. Truth endures. And in a world so often defined by noise, their quiet insistence on sincerity might be the most powerful act of all.